Hi, welcome to 10 by 6. Everybody all right?
Yay!
Thanks for inviting us, Ben.
Fantastic.
Evening
Brilliant.
all.
Yeah, well, I'll read from left anti-clockwise around the clock from how I'm looking at it. So to Damien Stone, welcome. Lizzie Fletcher, welcome. Both of you have been on before, so welcome back. And my partner in crime, Tom Lane.
Hi, everyone.
And we're doing a special episode of 10 by 6 this week. It's entirely on the Labour Party conference, of which both Damien and Lizzie were able to attend. So we're going to pick their brains and identify certain things that occurred and their perceptions of it. So let's kick off a general question, obviously to Damien and Lizzie. What were your highlights? What were your highlights of the 3 or 4 days that you were there? Lizzie.
Oh, thank you. Ladies first, is it today? Right, my absolute highlight was Loki. Loki is a rapper, and he first came to the forefront of people's attention when Grenfell happened, which was the burning of the Tower Block due to government inaction, misuse of funds, and the serious detriment to people's lives, the cladding. And he has since gone on. He may have already been doing it, but he just came to people's notice because of that. But now he not only does he do brilliant rap songs, he just gets all the data. So he did a show which was, well, he did a speech at a show, which was, so who is Keir Starmer? And he told the entire history of Keir Starmer. And it was scary as anything. You know, the fact that he is corporate, he's establishment, he is Zionist, I can't think what, unqualified or whatever, you know, without any doubt, he states that he is a Zionist. And which means that he supports the state of Israel, which is apartheid. It's been declared apartheid by both the Northern Ireland government and the Labour Party. But you know, we all know, everybody knows across the world, so many governments of so many countries that aren't under the influence of or under the thumb of the USA and UK establishments and, you know, the war machine, have all declared Israel is an apartheid state. And South Africa was released from apartheid by the furor created around the world, and this is just the beginning. So that the Loki talking about the data and the mission, sorry, I can't remember the name for it, the motion that the Young Labour guys put through, that was passed unanimously. Now, if we've been in government, if Labour had been in government, should I say, not we, because I'm not Labour. If Labour had been in government, if socialists had been in government, that means we. If we'd been in government as socialists under Jeremy Corbyn, that would have been a fait accompli already. I think we would have already declared, we would already be BDSing, you know, boycott, divest, and sanction Israel, and we would be sorting that mess out. We're murdering people. Anyway, over to Damien.
Can I just say before you crack on, I think there's something profoundly different between South Africa and Israel, and that's their geography. I think what was done before apartheid came down in South Africa and Mandela was released and all that, was the corporations got an absolute foothold in all the natural minerals that exist in South Africa in terms of the mining industries, etc. Whereas the political relevance of Israel and its positioning geographically makes it a whole different argument around apartheid in terms of how the global world will respond to it.
Not really. If you think about the biggest oil fields on the planet in Gaza,
yeah, but they're not. To be fair,
control of.
To be fair, the biggest oil fields on the planet are around Venezuela, which is why Venezuela is such a hot potato.
That's true. That might very well be true, but they are huge, aren't they? The ones in Gaza. I know that they're the biggest in that area of the globe, should I say.
And it's very difficult, I think, for the corporations to get a foothold in Israel and Palestine in the same way as it was in South Africa, because in South Africa it was all done so clandestinely, whereas there's so many people looking now in Israel. Sorry, over to you.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
I hope so, yeah. Over to you, Damien.
Right, well, highlights. I mean, if I just set the scene a bit, I mean, I'm still a Labour Party member, and I could have paid my £100 or whatever to be a visitor at conference. I could have spent a few more quid going to the World Transformed event, which is more interesting than the Labour conference. But you can go to conference. You don't have to be a Labour Party member, and there'll be something to go and watch. And for at least 2 years running now at the Rialto Theatre, which is quite near the conference, there was an event which was run by the Resist movement. So by spending all of my time there and meeting very interesting people, you know, my membership is jeopardized. You know, either I'll leave the party soon when I choose, or it's inevitable that they're bound to expel me in the next few weeks simply for attending the Resist Festival. The Resist Festival, probably half the people who attended it are Jewish. Many of them have already been expelled or suspended or harangued. And that's what is such a farce. I had a brilliant time at conference as a member who didn't actually step foot inside the conference hall. And I was surrounded by brilliant people who actually know the meaning of the word solidarity. And they felt empowered to talk about whatever they wanted. We talked about Julian Assange, we talked about WikiLeaks, we talked about the witch hunt, we talked about the security state. So in a way, although I'm still a member, if you're not a member, it's nothing to be scared of anymore. You know, the shackles are off you and you can, again, say what you want. And it's a very liberating feeling, and I'm going to be there soon. So obviously, given that you're free to speak your mind and you're not looking over your shoulder, you're going to have a much better, more interesting festival. And I imagine that the World Transformed people still had to watch what they said. So really, the highlight for me was the fact that we talked about Palestine at the Rialto because you're allowed to there. And there were some very moving speeches. We even had a live link to Hebron, where the organizer of Youth Against the Settlements was there. Very inspirational man. And I was really moved at one point because, I mean, normally we say to the Palestinians, you know, we're on your side and don't give up. But he was the one telling us not to give up. I mean, he knows what some of us have had to go through and what it's like to be in this country supporting the Palestinian people. And he wants us not to give up on them, and he wants us to be brave. And, you know, I found that really moving, that they're actually thinking about us and what we've had to go through. And he made the point that even without Jeremy Corbyn, despite the fact they've had to drive pro-Palestinian elements out of the Labour Party, that motion which declared Israel an apartheid state actually carried despite everything that's happened. And that suggests to him that the Palestine issue is one that can never be ignored. The injustice is far too great. And that's what's buoyed me a little bit, you know, despite all the negativity and the fact that, you know, fake democracy has won this week and they've had their week and you can't take it away from them. They have won really this battle of, you know, but it's not a real victory based on sort of justice and truth and solidarity. I mean, the left is meant to be about solidarity, and these people have spent the last 2 years kicking people out. You're more likely to get kicked out of the Labour Party now if you're Jewish, which to me suggests that this party, well, it's obviously not a problem of anti-Semitism if people kicked out of the party are mainly Jewish people. The fact is they're left-wing Jewish people, and that's racism in itself to discriminate against them. But so that was a highlight amongst all the dark. There's a lot to be hopeful about.
And I think it was great also, I think Lizzie can come on this as well, but it's probably the only event or the only political party event where they have workshops on independent media. Because if you're going to promote the idea of free speech, we really have to promote the idea of independent media that runs alongside it. Whereas obviously the Labour Party conference was dominated by the corporate media.
Yes,
and their spin.
Yes, if you want to talk about that very briefly, I know you've got not much time. Yes, the TWT, there was the conference, right? The Labour Party conference, which was strictly regulated, police in every aisle, armed police in every aisle, making sure that nobody spoke up, that not a single member on the floor of that conference room said a word. If they did, they got ejected and their pass was revoked and they weren't allowed in again, and they were arrested by police if they tried to say anything against that. It was an absolutely awful atmosphere at conference. But the World Transformed was quite a different atmosphere. It wasn't the same as it has been in previous years. Obviously, you can't count how much the COVID pandemic has caused this, but there were very few people at the World Transformed. But everywhere that Jeremy went, there were as many people had driven across the country to see him, you know. So Jeremy hasn't lost any of his appeal to ordinary people, and some people who you know, in the MPs and the prominent people that he didn't stick his foot out for and stand up and support vocally against the party machine. Those people were a bit, you know, didn't come to see him, but every ordinary people did. And the independent media was running TWT TV and the comms in the communications in the World Transformed. So Dan of Bywire was running that, and Claudia was his Batman. And yeah, so that was very good. It encompassed a lot of events, arts, music, as well as politics and education, and it didn't go anywhere near the subject of Palestine. It didn't go anywhere near the controversial subjects, but yes, we were very prominent. Of course, Navarra did one stint. The Tisky Sour, which is part of Navarra, but they did one stint, and Owen Jones did one stint. So that, I always think of that as the corporate part of the World Transformed, the Labour Party part of the World Transformed, which has, of course, had quite a lot of influence in previous years, and that has shifted quite a lot. There wasn't, I mean, all the MPs, the lefty MPs, Jeremy came, of course. He wasn't allowed into conference. There was a huge row when he went in for the Young Labour group, who were eventually allowed into conference, invited him in, and everybody in the establishment went mad because, of course, people flocked to see him, but nobody else flocked to anything else. But yeah, independent media is more prominent in it, on the digital side anyway, but not on the personality fame side, yeah. Apart from Aaron Bastani, of course, and yeah. Owen. Well, if Owen Jones is more lefty than a lot, so he does his bit.
In terms of the main conference, I heard that, you know, a lot of independent media was essentially barred from the main conference.
We were all barred,
but the Sun,
apart from Aaron.
Yeah, but the Sun, GB News, for example, were invited. How do you both feel about that? Damien, what's your thoughts on coverage and independent media?
Well, I'm not surprised at all. There's no excuse for a political party in this country to let any journalists in to report on the conference. I mean, but then again, this is the current Labour Party. Everything they've done this week has been, as I say, it's a phony democracy. It may look good on TV, and they know they've got these, you know, bought corporate entities reporting the message that they want to put out. But I hope one day the public will see through this. I mean, if your news organization is happy to pump out a certain message, and it's what the political parties want you to put out there, then the people will give up thinking that, you know, they have a stake in the, you know, in the media in this country, and they'll move to other things. I mean, increasingly it will be easy to set up perhaps your own newspaper. People are already making some of the best shows on YouTube, which are ones where you get somebody who knows what they're talking about, and they'll take a news article or a news report, and they'll literally break it down sentence by sentence, and they expose the horror of what is the mainstream news. And eventually people will get pissed off that people are earning £120,000 a year to write fabrication, because I mean, I love the Jimmy Dore show, and I suggest anyone go out there and watch it. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, he's a bit too noisy and a bit too shouty, but he's a Jewish comedian who grew up in New York. So yeah, he's a little bit feisty, but he's also genuinely angry about what's happening across the globe. And he's losing celebrity friends all the time because he just does not care anymore. And his show is amazing. You learn more in half an hour on the Jimmy Dore show than you would reading all the newspapers for a whole week. It's brilliant. He shows these idiot journalists up for, well, they're either idiots or they're liars, and it's fascinating to watch. I'm always going to be interested in politics. If the Labour Party expel me, I couldn't give a toss, because politics is always going to be interesting, and it's much more interesting when you're allowed to say what you want to say. People, you know, then, you know, see the integrity in doing that. What we've got at the moment is everything that's wrong with journalism. So I have a good time anyway. I'm disappointed about the vote on the rule change. I mean, that really is the biggest kick in the teeth, because it does mean that probably there will never be a choice to vote for someone like Jeremy Corbyn ever again. That's how significant that is. But apart from that, I'm going to carry on having a nice time. I'm going to be, you know, improving my knowledge by listening to people who aren't lying to me. And generally, I think it'll be the power of debate and truth and honesty, which will, you know, hopefully see the back of these idiot journalists who can't get away with this forever. And I say, if you are bored of telly generally, go and watch the Jimmy Dore show, go and watch the Grey Zone on YouTube. There's hundreds of brilliant shows, and it will blow your mind. You'll learn something new and interesting every single day, and you'll never be bored again, I promise.
Brilliant. Thank you, Damien. Tom, can I just ask both of you now then, because you've identified, Damien, that the internal democracy vote in terms of the decision who's going to be leader, is that your ultimate low from the conference?
Oh, it absolutely, because that really does mean something. And what amazes you, it's almost like how pathetic the left can be sometimes. They obviously wanted to bring in the electoral college, and that would hand more power to the MPs again, you know, rather than it be one member, one vote. The MPs, however few there are these days, would make up a third of the votes. Now, that was all about making sure that they have a veto on any left-wing candidate standing. So supposedly all the unions and all the good lefties showing solidarity said, no, will not pass, Starmer, that is our red line. And then, of course, he goes away and comes up with another little trick which will still make sure you'll never get a left-wing candidate again. And they all hold their hands up and vote for it. I mean, it's utterly staggering that they were allowed to get away with that, and that people on the left aren't absolutely incensed. I hear that Unison, who rather tipped the scales in favor of Starmer, it was the old leadership who are now voted out who actually were the ones who decided to go against what the party what members wanted and vote for the rule change. But that's no way to run an organization. The fact that they'd already lost power, they shouldn't have been allowed to vote at the Labour conference. So hopefully what will happen is that Unison, the new leadership, will take over the reins, and next year perhaps they'll be proposing to leave the Labour Party altogether, or to, you know, go back to the old.
Sooner than that, I hope.
Well, it could. I think Starmer, yeah, if you are that, you know, it looks even the people who like him knows that his speech yesterday was horrible. It was stilted. He has no charisma. It's just, he seemed completely out of his depth. So perhaps he will be gone, and it'll probably be, you know, people on the left and the right who say enough is enough. We just cannot take any more of this.
I did see, I don't know if this is an actual joke that Starmer told, but I saw it on social media earlier today, and it said, when he said, my dad was a tool maker, in a funny, strange way, slightly strange way, so was Boris Johnson's.
Yeah, well, his dad was a tool maker, but he owned the company and employed a lot of people.
Brilliant.
Keir
Thank you, Lizzie.
Starmer's worth 7.7 million.
Saw that. Yeah,
His
thank you.
father ran Oxted, OXTED tool company. They still exist. Probably Keir's in the back room with shares in it. You know, yes. So that was a lie. I mean, it was a, what do you call it when you make things up on your CV? Yes, it's actually a lie. And he also neglected to mention that he went to Reigate Grammar School, which was fee paying. So he had a paid for education. And yes, his parents were Labour, truly Labour. And they did a lot of work, you know, around their local area in Surrey, I think it is. But you know, Keir Starmer's now 50 odd years old, and he has grown up and became a QC. You know, you can just look at the evidence of his actions. You know, the MI5 guys who got told that they wouldn't be prosecuted for all sorts of horrible, nefarious activities, torture. Absolute torture, and they weren't prosecuted because on Starmer's say so. Starmer now saying that young people shouldn't be prosecuted for whatever it was, and he was the one in charge of the DPP who should have made sure that that wasn't ever going to happen. Yet it happened while he was in charge of it. So you just got to look at his actions, and you got to look at the actions of everybody that tells you they're doing something. Like John Ashworth tells you, oh yes, Labour are going to stop the NHS being privatised. He sits in with Simon Stevens and plans how to privatise, how to finally privatise, because it's already 95% gone, how to privatise our public services and our last remaining public service, the NHS. I get so angry. Sorry.
What can I just throw, Tom? What was your low then, Lizzie? Before we move on, what was the low?
The entire establishment at the conference, and how mainstream media completely propped that up if they didn't instigate it, because you know it was a whole charade, an absolute charade. There was no democracy there whatsoever. There was no democracy there. And you know, the only things that happened which might help people, you know, what about the £15 an hour? You know, what happened to that? What about the police stood in the aisles policing people? You know, it was absolutely horrible. And that was, you know, the fact that 2 years ago, independent media was celebrated, invited into conference. We did so many articles, made films, videos, and we were part of the Labour Party, as was every DPAC. Look how DPAC have been demonised, you know. WASPI weren't allowed into, that's the Women Against the State Pension Increase. You know, the delay in women getting, you know, like you should retire at 60. You know, whether you're a man or a woman, really, and you've earned the right. I think you've paid your taxes. You've earned the right to have an income that enables you to go out and spend in the economy, which gives young people careers. It gives them employment in all the leisure activities that you might want to take part in. So yeah, the conference was absolutely horrific.
Thank you, Lizzie. Tom?
Yeah, I got a number of things. I mean, one is people have pointed out that there were a number of really good things passed by conference. Things to do with the £15 minimum wage. You referred to the motion about in relation to Israel as an apartheid state, and a number of other things, as well as probably the big negative thing, which is the increase to 20% in terms of party leadership nominations. What are the chances of the good things becoming future Labour policy then, having been
no chance whatsoever? No chance whatsoever, Tom. Honestly, it was a complete sham. And the fact that the Labour Party PLP establishment, you know, whatever you want to call them, the boys at the top, male, pale and stale, the fact that they fought their members, intimidated their members, bullied their members and bullied everybody who tried to oppose them, and the only reason those two motions got squeezed through was because the last remaining members of the Labour Party, I think they're down 250,000 members, they won't produce the data of their membership, so nobody knows what their membership is down to, but it's definitely down past pre-Corbyn days. So and they are the establishment. They only want the bankers' money and the big corporate money. They don't want to know about ordinary people, and those motions that did get through will never see the light of day on policy. They've already started stating that.
Yeah. Can I just come in and just say, I mean, if you look at Starmer's speech, I mean, he's absolutely in awe of power, isn't he? He was there on the floor praising NATO. You can now join Labour Friends of the Police. I mean, everything about duty and royalty. I mean, that's where he is. So nothing is going to change, is it?
What about the Nazi slogan?
So it doesn't matter. There might be some good things, but it's like the Democrats in America. Who would vote for Hillary Clinton over any of them? I mean, you don't want to vote for any of them until things change, and until the members fight for democracy in their own party and get the leaders that they want, and the leadership listens to the members who have all the best ideas, then nothing's going to change. So I would not vote Labour. I have no intention of doing that ever again, while it is what it is, because there's, you know, whether it's Starmer in charge, given what he said yesterday, or the Tories, the fact is we are more likely to go to war under him and the Tories, and we wouldn't have done under Corbyn. I mean, they're sending warships to China. I mean, I feel unsafe that things are going to kick off. I mean, they don't talk about what's happening on the other side of the world, America's pivot towards Asia. It's a scary thing, and we don't talk about it, but that idiot Starmer will fall into line with everything, and you could easily have another Iraq on your hands. And it's really peace around the world that really interests me more than anything, because even if you get your domestic policy at home right, I'm not gonna, you know, turn a blind eye to what we do around the world, blowing people up and blowing
here,
you know, making them into basket cases. It's terrible. But what was good about the place I went to, the Resist Festival, you got people like Matt Kennard, who produces UK Declassified, who talks about these things, and he takes on the security state and the military head on. And his debate was about, you know, Assange. I mean, this very brave man was there. He could be the next Julian Assange, possibly. I mean, his journalism is traditional. It's slightly different to Julian Assange, but people like him are the ones that, you know, really need to be worried these days, and we need to support them.
Matt's
ex-mainstream media, so he does have an intimate knowledge of how the establishment works to cover up stories, narratives that they don't want you to know about. So if you just watch the TV and read the newspapers or listen to the radio, you will not hear more than 3 words of truth. You know, everybody must look at independent media. Listen to people. You can hear from the passion in their voice. They're not reading from their phones like Nadia Whittam or whatever her name is. You know, she's reading this script from her phone because she doesn't feel anything that she's talking about. You know, listen to people like, you know, me, like Jason on 10 by 6, Dorset Eye, Vox Political, Poverty Watch, wear red. You know, all the people, there are lots of big ones, yes, but there are also lots of little ones. And those people are telling you the truth. Listen and judge them. You're going to feel for it, because you can see they're not wearing a suit. They're not being paid £120,000 a year or £400,000 a year, is it, Laura Kunsberg's on, to say exactly what they're told to bloody say.
And
Rant over.
can I just say, sorry, and we must remember that the 10 by 6 is entirely a mutual production between Tom and I, so it's not just me by a long way.
That's all right.
No.
Can I just
Sorry,
focus a little bit on Starmer's speech on the last day? There's been obviously mixed reviews of it, and I guess I know what you're likely to feel about it. There's been some main criticisms of it, that it was very short on policy, that he referred to himself, I think it was 146 different times, that he didn't quite tell the truth about his family history. He included a phrase that was essentially used by the Nazi Party. His whole thing about education was just simply about his message was education is to get young people fit for work, which is a particular view of education which isn't quite in line with mine and a lot of other people's view that work in education. It isn't just about getting young people fit for work. And of course, he also did this thing where he reneged on what he'd originally said about nationalisation of things like utilities and train services and things. And he's now saying that he never said that he was going to renationalise them. That public ownership means something very different.
Yeah.
So there's been lots
can I just say we've got just over a minute left. So can you keep your answers to about 30 seconds each?
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of criticisms, but also there've been obviously people that support Starmer that came out and said, what a visionary, groundbreaking speech that sets the party up for a brand new, fabulous future. So I just wonder what's your views on it?
Don't believe it. Don't believe any of it. It's all complete bullshit.
Thank you, Lizzie. Damien.
Tom, I think you made all the points, which basically demolishes his speech. I mean, he was telling anecdotes that lasted about 5 minutes, and you knew after the first 30 seconds where it was going and what the conclusion was going to be. It was like somebody who has no charisma trying to tell a funny joke. It was amazing. And those anecdotes were very boring, and they were all basically saying the same thing. And it generally ended with some reference to his dad and how he learned everything at the kitchen table. I mean, it was excruciating.
Brilliant. Can we finish it there? Thank you so much, Damien. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for coming on 10 by 6. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting hearing about it firsthand, and not just about the conference, as Damien said, a lot of the conference.